Hello there my friends, it's Ebird Online. So many new couples, so little time. And today we're going to be talking about Emily and Cobin. So Emily, who's 29, met Cobin, who's 34, where all good 90-day fiancé couples meet, on a one-night stand. She lets us know that she's a country girl, and she loves riding, and she took that attitude all the way to China with her when she went travelling. And she met Cobin, who's from Cameroon, in China. And before she knew it, the couple discovered she was pregnant. She tapped her heels thrice and back to Kansas she went, with a little bun in the oven. And so the beginning was very dicey, but this story has continued, really I think, with more of the same. Emily's made some interesting life choices, and there are quite a few red flags flying high above Emily's head, and at the end of the video I'm going to go over all of those with you. But before we get into all of that, thank you everyone who's subscribed to my channel. I really do appreciate the support, but if you haven't done so, please consider subscribing and join the Ebird family. Just press that big red button and make Ebird a very happy Ebird. And guys, if you enjoy the video, please don't forget to smash the like button, it really does help my algorithm. And also press the notification bell if you don't want to miss any of my 90-day fiancé videos. And so apologies for my voice at the moment, although there's not even a glimpse of the sun. I'm suffering with hay fever and it's playing havoc with my vocal cords. And so without further ado, I give you Emily and Cobin. So 3 years ago, Emily decided to go to China and teach English as a foreign language. And guys, that's exactly what I did, right after I finished my degree. It was a very interesting time. And so that's where Emily met the love of her life, 34-year-old Cobin, who's from Cameroon. And she tells us, I love black guys. So it was written that I'd meet the only black guy in China. She says it started out and it was supposed to be a one-night stand, but then things got really serious really quickly. They spent every moment together, and then she became pregnant. Feelings developed, and Cobin decided to ask her to marry him. Cobin got down on one knee, and by the looks of things it was in the middle of a shopping centre. Who said romance was dead? And he asked, will you marry me? And Emily agreed on the proviso that he sell his village in order to buy her a decent ring. But then it was just 4 weeks later that Emily discovered she was pregnant, so she moved back home to her one-horse town. They seem to have purchased another horse in her absence, and she told her parents. And she lets us know that she was really worried because she didn't want to upset her mum in any way. Her mum was very upset, but mainly because she wasn't married. And also because she didn't know Cobin. But I think it's fair to suggest at this point, Emily, you don't know Cobin either. You were only with him for 2 months. 2 months on, 2 years off. You don't know him. And so Emily lets production know that she had a really bad track record and she went for bad boys and 2 of her exes are incarcerated. And so it's been 2 years since Emily's seen Cobin and obviously he's never seen his son. But Emily's main concern is that she's put weight on. And that she's no longer fun Emily because she doesn't go out partying anymore. She's mum Emily. And I can't help but think that Emily, that really at this point should be the least of your concerns, the very least. And so the next time we see them, she's sitting with her mum, dad and sister at the family dining table and they're discussing how things are going to be when Cobin moves in. And she's not sure how the dynamics are going to work. Her dad says Emily's a wild child, and I can't help but notice that none of her family have any faith in her ability to pick a suitable partner. But when I start considering this, I think they can feel very heartened by the fact that she hasn't chosen this partner anyway. She didn't choose Cobin, he was just the only black guy in China, and then she accidentally got knocked up. So I guess it's not really her choice, so who knows? It has the possibility of turning out well. And her mum points out that she didn't know Cobin for very long before they got pregnant, and she in turn points out to her mum that she and her dad got engaged after a month of dating. To which they then said, yes, but that was in the 80s. What difference does that make, mum and dad? I don't get it. There was divorce in the 80s. Unless of course you're talking about the 1880s. And then they discuss another matter, and that's the fact that there aren't many black people in Kansas where they live. Oh dear guys. So he's going to be living in a one-horse town where there are no black people and living with Emily and her whole family. I don't think he's going to like this joint, I really don't. And so then Emily's dad said, how long is it until he can work? 90 days? And she said no, 6 months. And the rest. It's 90 days until you get married and then about 5 months for the green card. So, yeah, and the rest. And also, if he's living in a one-horse town, I really don't fancy his job prospects. I wonder what he's going to do. And so her dad said, so I'll be picking up the tab for 6 months. Well, one thing's for sure, you better not get pregnant again. Oh, Dad, another thing's for sure as well. She will get pregnant again. It virtually goes without saying, and I doubt it will take very long. And so her dad then inquired as to what Cobin was doing out in Cameroon, and Emily explained that he invested his money into a cafe 3 to 4 months ago. And her dad said, right, so he invested in a business after the 90-day visa was applied for. And Emily said, yeah. And so his dad said, well, that tells me he has no business acumen and he doesn't really know what he's doing. Dad, that tells you absolutely nothing. What do you know about life or business in Cameroon? Probably the same as me, nothing. But this is what I'll tell you. Jobs in Cameroon are not plentiful. So if you want to earn money during a pandemic, the best thing for you to do is to get your own business. He gambled on himself and he thought, if I can make this business amazing before I go, then maybe I can make some more money. As it was, he didn't manage to, and he came out of it with the same money that he put in. I'm assuming he had his share of the takings during that 3 to 4 months. But there's one other thing. He was denied a holiday visa, so for all he knew, he could have been denied the K1 visa as well. What does he do? Sit and wait for 8 or 9 months until the K1 visa gets denied and then try and start a business. No, you get on with life, and when the visa comes through, then you make your plans. That's what a normal, sane person would do, Dad. So guys, this is when the red flags started flying for Emily. We next see Emily and she's with her sister and she's going through sexy underwear and deciding what to take for her first big night with Cobin. And then she also meets up with one of her friends, Sean, and she discusses their sex life and they talk about the fact she's bigger, and her main worry and main concern is, will Cobin still fancy me? And it seems to me her concern for Cobin and his relationship with Cobin, their son, is definitely a backseat concern for Emily. Her main concern is for herself. And her friend Sean said, well, you look a little different, a lot different now. It will be a real test for him. You've definitely put quite a lot of weight on. But what Emily's not telling anyone is the fact that when Cobin gets into the country, although he's never met his own son, she's going to whisk him away for a night of passion for their first night. And she thinks it's okay that he doesn't see his son until the following day. Guys, this is a recipe for disaster, and it shows us off the bat that Emily is quite selfish. There's literally nothing to stop her letting Cobin have a couple of nights with his son, and then those guys spending a night in a hotel for one night afterwards. I'm sure her sister or her parents would babysit for her. And so finally Emily goes to the airport to meet Cobin. She tells us she's super nervous and she has to work out if the chemistry is still there. And she also wonders what he'll think to her weight gain and her mum bod. Well, I guess she won't have to wait long to find out because she decided to wear a bodycon dress. So when he finally saw her, they ran to each other and they hugged and they kissed, and it was really a touching scene. I've got to say, I find Cobin quite charming, I really do. He's got a beautiful smile and he seems to have an inner warmth. I'm strangely now much more hopeful about this relationship. And then they talked to production, and Cobin said to producers, well, she's changed. In fact, she's gained weight, but it's really not about how she looks. But thankfully Emily took that in the spirit that it was meant, i.e. I just love this woman, and a few pounds couldn't come between me and the one I love. That's how I took it anyway. And then he said, I'm complete, this is everything. I just can't wait to see my son. He said, I haven't seen my son for 2 years. Cobin, nobody's seen your son for 2 years because he's only 17 months old. Well, I suppose unless you count the sonographer. That's pretty much the only person. And then Cobin said, when can I see my son? Oh dear, Cobin, not for some time yet. It would seem you've got a bit of a performance to put in first. And so the couple get into the car, and as they're driving along, Emily shows him some sexy underwear. And she says she wants to try to recreate their love life. And she said, I know you're going to be mad with me, but we're going to a hotel first. I want us to have a great night of sex first, and then you'll see your son tomorrow. And immediately, Cobin is very upset. And he says, but what about Cobin? I want to meet him so badly. I want to meet my son. And then she lies and tells him it's our only opportunity to be together. And very reluctantly, he agrees. And so that evening when they go to a restaurant, he reasserts he wants to meet Cobin as soon as possible. And he says to production, I think that Emily's being a little bit selfish at this point. She knows how badly I want to meet my son. And guys, this whole thing broke my heart because I know he's been literally counting down the days every day until he sees his son. And I know you might think, well, it's been 17 months, so what's another 24 hours? The last 24 hours is everything when you know he's within touching distance, but yet you still can't see him. And so they sit at the restaurant. And after reasserting that he wants to meet Cobin, he says to Emily, well, I'm not sure about this food, you can order for me. And guys, for me, this is red flag number 2. Nobody else except for the Ebird is going to see this as a big deal, but I know I certainly do. She orders the shrimp risotto for him, but she orders the steak for herself. Oh Lord, when you come all the way from Africa and all you get is a plate of rice. Emily, you really have got some nerve. And so as he's sitting in the restaurant, he looks around and says he feels out of place and there are no black people here. And Emily said, well, there aren't that many black people in this area, but I'm sure there are some. And then she looks mountain high and valley low, and finally she spots a black person sitting at the far corner in the restaurant. And she said, there we have it, there's one, everything's okay now. No guys, it wasn't Miona, it was just some guy sitting in the corner. Cobin's quite surprised because I guess he thought when he got to America it was going to be how you see on the movies, very mixed and very cosmopolitan. And I guess where he is, it really isn't. And he said, well, I want to be somewhere where there's all different races. But I guess it's unfortunate in the fact that they're living with Emily's parents and they live where they live. And she said to him, but there weren't many black people in China. And she's right, there weren't. And I had my own struggles with that when I was in China. And it was quite interesting because Cobin said to production, Chinese people see black people as lesser than them, almost like crab from the bottom of your shoe. And I did find that when I was there, the racism was off the absolute chart. And some of the more remote places I went to, people would look at you as if they'd seen, I don't know, like an alien. And so I think after going through that, more than likely Cobin doesn't want baby Cobin to have to feel different in his surroundings. So I'm assuming we're going to be coming back to this issue during this series. I'd be interested to see, and I will be very interested to see how things turn out. But to me, another red flag was the fact that she kind of brushed it off and said, oh no, everything will be fine. And even her parents and her sister brought it up as a potential issue. So I kind of feel at this point she should be saying, well, let's see how it goes. We have to live with my parents for a while anyway, and we'll assess the situation as we go along. And straight after that comes another red flag. And so she asked Cobin outright, how much money do you have? And for some reason he doesn't want to say. And I'm guessing that's because he hasn't got as much as he would like to have. But she says, you know, I want a proper ring, so we have to pay for that. And also we've got to pay for my wedding. And we need to do that from the money that you've brought with you from Cameroon. Emily, where's Cameroon? That's right, it's in West Africa. How likely do you think it is that money that Cobin has brought with him from Cameroon will be enough for a nice ring and a wedding? I think you're going to have to do what Andre and Elizabeth did, have a small wedding and have a larger wedding at a later date. And she bangs on about it saying, I want to know how much money you bought. And they ascertain the fact that he didn't lose any money on the cafe. He came out with what he put in, which is about $2,000. But wait a minute, Cobin's got a point to make. And that point is, when they were in China, he paid for everything. And she said, yes, that's because you were working and I wasn't. Well, that's fine, Emily. But what's sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander. He's not allowed to work for the next at least 6 months. And so bearing that in mind, you will have to help support him for that time. And the fact that he paid for everything in China is all I need to know. He's not a little tight ass. And he's not trying to get a free lunch. And so they go for their night of passion, and we see them the next morning. And they both let us know, in far too many words, that they had an amazing time and that nothing has changed. And when we first see Cobin, he's wearing a vest and his underpants. I think it's fair to suggest he's no longer underwear modelling. And whilst much ado has been made about Emily's weight gain, seemingly nobody seems to mention Cobin's. How very sexist. It's fair to say they've both put a bit of weight on. And so the final scene is where finally Cobin gets to meet baby Cobin. As they drive towards the house, Cobin becomes overwhelmed and starts crying. And it's absolutely so sweet, he burst into tears. His anticipation was so great, I don't think he knew what to do with his emotions. And when they walk into the house, again he bursts into tears. And everybody's there, her parents and her sister. And he stares at his son, and then he tells production he's so sweet, and again he's crying. And I think the parents appreciated it because his dad said he's very, very nervous about things. but I think they liked the way that Cobin was very open and friendly with them, and he said, thank you so much for everything you've done. And her dad said, well, that's what we're here for. And it seems off the bat like the relationship's going to be quite a nice and friendly one. But baby Cobin was very shy, and he kept turning away from Cobin. But I guess it's going to take a bit of time. And Emily said, well, he's really hungry. He needs to be breastfed. Breastfed? I saw her expressing milk at the hotel earlier, but I didn't realise that at 17 months she was still breastfeeding her son. He's quite old to be breastfed. And in the final scene, Emily said to production, co-parenting with Cobin is going to be a challenge, I think. But from what I've seen so far, I think Cobin will be an excellent dad. And I think he'll put a lot into the relationship with his son. And that's where we leave things for this week. So what does the Ebird make from all of this? Well, what I want to do is round up all of the red flags. And then we'll finish on the positives of their relationship. So I think the first red flag, of course, is the fact that Emily's main concern was that she'd put on weight and she wondered if Cobin would still like her, and she was more worried about that, it seemed, than how the relationship between Cobin and his son was going to develop. And I did think it was really out of order that she didn't allow Cobin to meet his son on the first day. You could see Cobin felt away about this. And I think it takes a certain level of selfishness to deny him this first meeting as soon as is humanly possible. And I think then the next red flag was the fact that she's really worried about money, but on Cobin's first night there, she started talking about her ring and the wedding as if they're the most important things. Because they have a child, I think the most important thing is whatever Cobin needs. And then the second most important thing is for her to make him feel welcome and not pressurised and stressed over money. I think Cobin's quite a go-getter. He was out living and working in China. He's also worked as an underwear model. He had his own business back in Cameroon. He didn't rest on his laurels and sit around and wait for his K1 visa to come through. He got on with life and tried to make some money and establish himself with this business. But it was weird that Emily agreed with her dad. He doesn't seem to know much about business. I think that he does, but I think that time ran away with him and he wasn't able to make a profit out of the business before he had to leave for America. But who knows, if the pandemic had have lasted, let's say, another year, which it easily could have done, it would have meant that he wasn't twiddling his thumbs for yet another year. I personally think that was the right move. And Emily said she was worried about diapers for her son and feeding her son, but we all saw her spend money on sexy lingerie for their first night, which, given the way they carry on, was probably only on for about 10 seconds. If their finances were that tight, perhaps she shouldn't have spent the money on the hotel and the money on the meal and the money on the lingerie. I don't know if she has her priorities in order. And I say absolutely ditto about the ring. She can roll along with that ring until he starts working and they have the opportunity to buy a more expensive ring. She doesn't want to wear a fugazi ring for the rest of her life. She wants a nice ring, but surely this can't be a priority. But then overall, I think this is a good relationship. They have great chemistry together. They both seem quite easygoing. Cobin, as I said, seems as if he's a go-getter, so I don't think he'll have problems finding work or making sure he brings the money in. And he already said, I paid for everything when we were in China. So he's used to and anticipating being the breadwinner. And so I don't think they'll have problems moving forward in their relationship as soon as he's allowed to work. I really like Cobin. I think he's got a warm and sunny disposition and he's got a great smile and he seems really interested in being a great father to his son, and that's something I always love to see. So guys, let me know what you think in comments down below. Do you think this relationship can work? I think it definitely can, but I do think they need to try and get out of the family home, I believe, sooner rather than later, so they can be their own family and they're not under the lens and the gaze of her parents, which I think would be too much for anybody for a sustained period of time. So like I say, comments down below and I'm going to get on with my next video. Guys, thank you so much for listening and thank you to everyone who's subscribed to my channel. I really genuinely appreciate it. If you haven't done so yet, please consider hitting that red button and also don't forget to smash the like button. You've been listening to Ebird Online and I bid you good day.